AI is not technology deployment. AI very, very quickly leads to a ripple effect. Process change, organizational restructuring, the culture, one-off technology launch where we can roll out some workshops and training and job aids and be done with it, right? When you think of change management, it tends to be a bit more linear, a bit more sequential. You have a plan, you roll it out, you measure later, and then see what happens. Change activation is a much more decentralized approach in the flow of work, peer-to-peer led, very, very targeted and role specific. So using feedback, using behavioral data, using adoption data to have that adaptive approach to how we drive change. It comes down to these 3 A's: alignment, adoption, and adaptation. I would say adaptation is actually the most powerful thing when it comes to change activation. It's just how much data you get that allows you to be that agile and adapt as you go. When we think of personas, there are 3 different data points when you build out personas in change activation. You look at demographic data, which is who does someone report to, where do they sit in the organization, tenure, how long have they been with the organization, basically who they are, right? Second is you look at workflow actions, which is what do they do, when do they do it, in different systems, what do their workflows look like? And third is what we call response data. Response data is how do they respond to the change? How do they react to AI? What is their sentiment? What is their readiness levels? That's response data. We've actually found that the demographic data matters almost nothing. Like who someone reports to does not matter at all when it comes to AI adoption. But workflows don't lie. Take something like Claude Code, and for backend engineers adopting Claude Code, for example. You want to target your activation based on how many times are they using specific workflows and how often. Or are they doing the code review skill? Maybe you want people to do it like 5 times within 7 days. And then combining that with what is their attitude. So this could be, for example, you might have what we call AI attitude, which is based on feedback that the system collects. And then you might have like confident, for example, curious, skeptics. There are different personas that are built out from sentiment. So someone who's skeptic but still using it a lot, like that's an interesting persona, right? And then combining that with, for example, how do they respond to maybe you have an AI readiness self-assessment, for example. And a question like, how confident are you in using AI-powered tools in your daily workflows? Let's say this is on a scale of 1 to 10. You might want to target people at least an 8. Or maybe people who are at most a 3. And this works with Microsoft Copilot, it works with Claude, it works with ChatGPT, all your SAP Workday, Salesforce, like every single large system. Feed the data in here. It's super easy. It's a 2-way API, gets in here, and then you can target people based on the workflows that they're doing. You're a backend engineer and you have this guide to AI-powered development. So this might be something that someone gets the very first time that they get into Claude Code, for example. What they get here is role-specific, it's bite-sized, it's personalized to them. And this is all created with AI, right? So this is AI for AI. And it's targeted to backend engineers that have just started Claude Code and what can they actually do. And what they get here is 5-minute podcast, a check-in, which is then what you can use for targeting to reach the right personas, a video, another check-in, power read, and so on. So you don't need to create any content, you don't need to create any materials, all of that manual work goes away. And then the system understands who needs this at what time based on the workflows they're taking. So if we look at examples of what this looks like.
All right, so let's talk about Claude Code. I keep hearing people say it's just fancy autocomplete. And honestly, that's driving me nuts because it's completely wrong.
I've been hearing that too. So what's the actual difference? I use Copilot and it does suggest the next line pretty well.
This is entirely AI generated. So you can clone people's voices. If you have 2 good champions, clone their voices, feed that transcript in, and it becomes this 2-way dialogue that people can listen to just when they start their workflow. And this is all created with AI, right? So this is AI for AI. It's delivered to them right where they start that workflow. So all the emails and SharePoint sites and town halls and posters in the coffee room, all of that goes away and people just get, okay, what do I need to know when I do it? Identifying the super users becomes a key component of it. We can actually see who are influential with different groups. With this particular backend engineer group, Jeremy is actually the most popular to deliver a message, and people really trust Simon. So being able to identify champions based on who actually drives engagement in the sense of when you send a message from Simon, when Jeremy creates content, when Eliza creates content, what do people engage with? What leads to adoption, engagement, comments, questions, etc. So being able to identify them in this way, and then actually giving them the power to share, right? You can have different groups have different access, but then also groups that can create content on the topic. So actually giving people content creation rights and giving them content creation powers. And then you have things like a feed. So where you can actually form these different communities and people have their peer communities within here. This also connects to Microsoft. So if you're on Microsoft, people don't want to go to another platform. It's all right here. So you become more of the governance and less of the content creation. there are two ways of looking at data, right? So you have explicit feedback, which is what people are telling you, like surveys and pulse checks and comments, etc. But then also the implicit feedback, what are they not saying, but what are they doing? If you look at two people, you're rolling out an AI initiative. One of them goes, thumbs up, great initiative, I love it. But they actually just sped through the video, they didn't care about the podcast and didn't do much with it, compared to someone else who might be quiet, but they listened to something 3 times. They kept coming back to a quick guide. They kept coming back to a reference document. They shared that with a colleague. That implicit feedback tells you that that's actually much more of a champion than the person who went, great, I love this initiative. Having all of that data come together in one place, being able to combine adoption data with sentiment data, with feedback and the way that they interact with content and so on, all of that in one place is what forms that coherent picture. The way that we do this at Tigerhall, right, it is that always on continuous loops. So all the content that you saw, the interactive forums, the trails, the journeys in 33 different languages, all of that is automated, sent to the right people at the right times. All the reinforcement, sustainment, everything is done on its own. So wherever people work, where they are, that's where they get that enablement. Whether that's on Microsoft Teams, through a mobile app, on the web app, we also support Slack and Google, 87% engagement rate, which is about 10 times higher than most people have on email. And that is what gives you all of this feedback. And being able to track people listen to something twice, people are going back to certain things, forwarding it to a colleague, how they behave around it, how they respond to pulse checks and so on. That's what gives you this intelligence. So it becomes this always on loop where the data is what keeps feeding it. The response data is what becomes the most clear picture of what actually works with different groups and audiences.